Hey everyone, Daniel here. I wanted to make a video to talk about Microsoft's recent Windows 10 event in New York City, where they talked a little bit about the next update for Windows 10 as well as some new hardware. So I'm going to go ahead and recap that and share my thoughts on it. So first up, they named the next update for Windows 10 the Creators Update, which is coming early next year. It's the first of two planned updates next year, big updates for Windows 10. If you're on Insider Builds, this is the one that is known as Redstone 2. So in this update, their big push is for 3D modeling available to everyone. So they're putting out a new Paint app called Paint 3D, and in this new Paint app, you have access to, well, doing what you would do in Paint, but in 3 dimensions. So you can make 3D models and 3D images in this new Paint app. You'll be able to share these with people through a new service that they have called Remix 3D, so you can upload your own things or you can search for other things for you to use in your images. So they use the example of searching for a tree, and so people upload their trees and you can download one of theirs for you to use. They'll also have a partnership where SketchUp models will be available in Remix 3D. And that's a popular, somewhat more streamlined 3D software, modeling software. The big thing with Paint 3D, they said, is that's a much simplified, easier thing to use for the average person, and so it seems pretty cool. Then you'll also be able to import models from Minecraft into Remix 3D and I guess Paint 3D as well. And you'll also be able to 3D print those if you want. So if you've created some fancy thing in Minecraft and you want to 3D print it, this is a way to do that. And so then that was the big thing that they talked about. There'll of course be a lot of other things in the Creators Update, but it being called the Creators Update, they of course focused on something that you can create with. And then like transitioning into, that was the big software thing. They had a couple other things, but that's really the only thing worth mentioning. Then they transitioned that into hardware. So the first thing that they talked about were VR headsets coming from, so we've got Dell, HP, Lenovo, Asus, and Acer will be making Windows VR headsets. So all of this 3D stuff that they talked about is built on their Windows holographic platform, which is of course tied to HoloLens, which is the augmented reality thing that's self-contained and super fancy, but it's also $3,000 and only available to developers. So that's not something for the average everyday person to just go out and buy. So they're partnering with these companies to make VR headsets that can use this same content, this new 3D content, as well as anything that's built on Windows holographic. So they showed a demo of someone using HoloLens and then transitioning to one of these headsets and seeing more or less the same content. The big thing with these is that they're going to be a lot cheaper. They're going to be starting at $300, and you'll be able to plug them into theoretically any modern computer. You won't need like a gaming computer, which is what you need for an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive. Those have stricter hardware requirements. There'll also be all-in-one tracking, which is what means all the sensors it needs for tracking for your movement, as well as analyzing the environment, are all in the headset. With these gaming headsets like Oculus and the Vive, they have either cameras or like lasers that they use in order to track you in the headset. So that's a big difference there as well. If they're good, they could be pretty cool. A lot of the heavy lifting of R&D has been done by Oculus and Valve to figure out what it takes to make a good VR headset. Like, that information is out there. It's known what is needed. So if these companies, went and looked at that and was like, oh, that's how you do this in a good way, and then spent a little bit less in R&D in order to make these headsets cheaper, that could be pretty cool. Hopefully they work. Inside out tracking isn't something very widespread yet because it's harder to implement, so we'll see. So that was that. The big hardware though, so this is the big part of the event, was new Surface devices, of course. So first was the Surface Book with Performance Base. So they didn't do a major refresh to the Surface Book at all, but they added some new, they redid the bottom keyboard portion to give it a bit of a, performance boost. And so they made it slightly thicker, but with that you get an upgrade to an NVIDIA 965M GPU, which Microsoft is claiming a 2x boost in graphics performance. And then you also get better cooling as well. So this is, I guess, something that a lot of people were clamoring for. So people that use AutoCAD, people that game on this for whatever reason, they wanted a better GPU, so they went and put that in there. And so this is only for the i7 models. There's an i5 model as well, but this upgraded GPU base is only for i7 models. And that starts at $2,400. The pricing is a bit weird. So $2,400 is a $300 bump over the last year, the original first level i7. But then for a higher level i7s, it's only a $100 bump compared to the same model from last year. It's kind of weird, but essentially there is a price bump, so keep that in mind. Big news though was, of course, Surface Studio. There were some patent leaks around this and some name leakage, but really there's a lot of stuff here that people just didn't see coming. It's a new device category from Microsoft and the Surface line. So what is this? The Surface Studio is an all-in-one computer, and so we have a 28-inch screen, 3:2 aspect ratio, so the same aspect ratio you're familiar with on the Surface line. Very high resolution, 4500 by 3000. So it's like 4.5K is what they were calling it. The screen has support for Adobe RGB as well as DCI-P3 color set. So both of those are essentially for consumer monitors. That's essentially the highest color range that you can have on a consumer monitor. The monitor brightness is max 350 nits, and then it has 192 dpi. So let's go over a few of these things real quick. So the color range is good. That's great. That's, this is intended for artists, and obviously you want the widest color range possible for when you're drawing with colors. The 350 nits is a problem for HDR. This display won't be capable of either creating or viewing HDR video content, which needs a minimum of 1000 nits brightness for the display. So that's unfortunate. And this is an LCD display. They're claiming it's the thinnest LCD display ever made at this size, which, woo, okay, cool. But from all accounts, hand-on accounts, it's a very, very nice looking display, which is great. And so then also that DPI at 192, combined with the screen size and with the 200% scaling done by Windows, that means that 1 inch on screen is equal to 1 inch in real life, which is, you can kind of set it manually on your own computer if you want to try to, but the way Windows scaling works, it's not great if you're doing even something outside of like a quarter step or a half step. It's best used at integer steps. So that 200% means that nothing should look weird. And then also, with the resolution, screen size, and that scaling in mind, you get that 1 inch to 1 inch true life scale, essentially, which is pretty cool. They use the demo of holding up an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper up to the screen and it being the exact same size as the paper the outline of the paper in a Word document. So if you're doing something that requires scale, you'll be able to see that, and it'll be pretty cool. So internally, like this is all in one. So the computer is all in the base, and it's a kind of a small base, kind of like the Apple computers that they have just in the box there. So you're getting a Skylake i5 or an i7, 8 to 32 gigs of RAM, 1 or 2 terabyte hard drive, and then either a 965M or a 980M NVIDIA GPU. So that's relatively decent specs there. If you're running, CAD hardware, that should be okay. It's a very high resolution to be pushing these components to, though. That screen is definitely gonna be taxing if you're like rendering anything at native resolution. It's weird. So both the Surface Book that they announced and this new Surface Studio both have Skylake components. So it's entirely possible that they were working on these before Kaby Lake was available, which is the latest Intel chip coming out in 2016. But the reasonable thought process is that with all the issues Microsoft had last year with the Pro 4 and the Book, there were a lot of battery and power management issues when those launched, and those were first to market Skylake devices. And so the thought is that they didn't want to rush with Kaby Lake in these products. So to get used to them and avoid those issues, they're going to wait until 2017 to launch any Kaby Lake products. The current rumor is, of course, that early next year, alongside with this Creators Update, we'll get a new Pro and a new Book with Kaby Lake processors in there. But Surface Studio, so it's meant to turn your desk into a studio. And so the big thing here is that the screen is able to come down. It's on what they call a zero gravity hinge. So these two hinges that are connected to the base up to the screen have an internal spring structure to them, so that you can effortlessly like bring the screen down eventually down to, I believe, a 20 some odd degree angle. And so it's like a drafting board, so you can draw on it. And of course it's a Surface device, so it supports the Surface Pen. And so that's pretty cool. You get a big giant space to do your drawing on. The potential issue here is that it still supports, they didn't have a new Surface Pen. It's still the one from last year from the Pro 4 and the Book. So it doesn't recognize orientation at all, the angle, and it still only has 1024 levels of pressure sensitivity. So that was a great bump over the Pro 3, but the 1024 is still only half of the Wacom stylus. So that's unfortunate. And then people won't know until they get it, but the Pro 4 and Book had a problem with latency for some drawers that drew quickly. There was a lot of latency, so it'll be interesting to see if they made that any better in the studio. We'll see, given that it's still the same pen. My hope is that next year when they launch the new book and the Pro 5, the theoretical book 2 and Pro 5, that there'll be a new, better pen with it. And then they already made the Surface Studio with that in mind, so then you can just use that with the increased level of pressure and latency and wanting better latency. So that's my hope. There's also a rumor going around. I don't remember if it was a rumor or a statement from a Microsoft official, but I believe it's being said that Microsoft and Wacom are working on creating a new Surface stylus that has both Microsoft's N-Trig technology and Wacom's technology built into the same one. So that would be, I don't think it's a Surface one specifically. I think it's just one to be in market to use with various tablets to have both of those technologies in there. So it'll be interesting to see if they have that next year and if the studio will support it. But of course, the big thing here is how much is this giant fancy screen drawing technology, and it starts at $3,000 and then it goes up to $4,200. So that is certainly a lot of money. This is intended for professional artists for sure. Compared to even a high-end Wacom Cintiq, that's about the $3,000 model. It's about the same price as the high-end Wacom Cintiq. You get some advantages and disadvantages there. They're obviously getting a much better screen in general with the Surface Studio, and you're also, of course, getting a computer. A Wacom Cintiq is just a screen. But then, of course, we still don't know how well the pen and drawing aspect of the studio compares to Wacom, which is, of course, the major aspect that people would be looking to buy this for. And alongside with the Surface Studio, Microsoft also announced a new accessory called the Surface Dial. So this is a really cool thing. It's a little puck, and it's like a physical radial dial menu. So you can push it in to make selections and turn it as well. And with the Surface Studio, you can place it anywhere on screen, and wherever you've placed it on screen, it will emit a radial menu around your dial. So then you can turn it and see on screen what you're selecting as you turn the dial, which is pretty cool. And then I've also heard that the dial has haptic feedback, so there's a motor inside that'll vibrate as you turn it for different selections, which is pretty cool. That'll run you $100, and I think if you pre-order the Surface Studio, you'll get one for free. Now it's not just a Surface Studio accessory. It's compatible with all Windows 10 devices, or at least ones that'll have Bluetooth or whatever wireless protocol it is. I assume it's Bluetooth. So if you have a Surface device that you do drawing with, or a desktop that you do a lot of editing with, and you want this dial device, you can buy it, connect it to your computer, and then just leave it on the desk, and then at a fixed point on the screen, the radial dial will with menu selections will appear. And of course, these dial settings are all tied to the app that you're currently using it with. So if you're using a paint app, you could have it set to selecting colors. So as you're drawing, you could rotate the dial to dynamically change the color as you're drawing. So you don't have to go into a menu and pick your color. You can just have the dial, rotate it, and you'll have your color selected. Or another demo they showed was a little bit more basic. So if you're in Word and you've got a big document, you can use the dial to scroll through pages, which was pretty cool. I don't know if I'm going to use that myself. I don't I mean, I obviously do video editing, but nothing too crazy. I can't see myself getting the dial, but you know, the Surface Studio is definitely best when using this dial. If you're an artist, it seems really cool. It's very expensive, so it'll be interesting to see how well the drawing works compared to the Pro 4 and the book, and of course Wacom stuff and Apple iPad Pro and their pencil, which surprisingly works very well for a first-time product on that side. So yeah, that's it. If you want to see more, of course, subscribe. This is kind of a long video, so I assume if you're watching this, you're already subscribed, probably. I've got a few reviews coming up here. I've been busy with school, so in December here, I'm going to crank out quite a few more. So hopefully those will come out at a regular clip in the not too distant future. I also just recorded one for the band 2 here, so that'll be coming up shortly as well. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.